Captain John Canson was a man of discipline. A seasoned interstellar hauler known for his unwavering efficiency, he had no tolerance for disorder, inefficiency, or the unexpected. His vessel, the Mercury's Gambit, was a sleek, heavily modified freighter tasked with transporting everything from luxury goods to top-secret government technology across the stars. It was supposed to be another routine cargo run, until things took a turn. John stood on the bridge, arms crossed over his broad chest, his keen green eyes scanning the cargo manifest scrolling across the holoscreen. Everything appeared in order. Everything, except for one unmarked crate. "What's this?" he muttered, narrowing his eyes. His first officer, a lanky man with a perpetually anxious expression, cleared his throat. It just showed up on the manifest, sir. No sender ID, no destination. We were going to check it once we hit orbit, but, well, it sort of checked itself." A loud crack echoed through the ship, and over the internal cameras they saw the crate burst open. Packing foam flew in all directions, and inside, something or someone emerged. John blinked. "Is that a woman?" Not just any woman. A stunning alien female, her deep cerulean blue skin shimmering like the depths of space, unfolded from the crate, shaking off the foam like a goddess stepping from a celestial gift box. Her hair, a cascade of golden waves, tumbled down her back, and her eyes glowed an ethereal silver. Most striking of all was her gown, an elaborate shimmering creation that left little to the imagination. The tight, translucent fabric clung to her curves, embroidered with intricate alien patterns of gold and pearl. She smiled at the camera, her full lips parting in a delighted grin. "Ah, my beloved!" John's stomach dropped. Oh no. Before he could react, she was already striding toward the bridge with an unsettling level of confidence. The airlock doors slid open, and there she stood, radiant in her bridal glory. The room went silent. John took a slow breath. "All right. Someone explain why I suddenly have a mail order space bride in my cargo hold." The woman clasped her hands together, her eyes shining with joy. "I am Zil Nara, and you are my fated husband." John winced. "That's gonna be a no from me." "Oh, but it is written in the stars," she continued unfazed. "My people, the Glivani, have long admired human men. It is our sacred tradition. If we wish to wed, we must stow away on the ship of our destined mate and present ourselves in our finest bridal attire. If he accepts, we are bound for life." His crew exchanged confused glances. John pinched the bridge of his nose. "Let me get this straight. You hid in my cargo hold because some alien horoscope told you I was your soulmate?" Zilnara giggled, tilting her head. "We do not rely on horoscopes. The Oracle of Ve'ani herself foretold it. I would stow away on a mighty ship and emerge before my destined love, and he would be—" She gestured to him, her cheeks flushing a deeper shade of blue. A strong, handsome human captain with fierce eyes and a commanding presence. John gave her a flat look. "That's oddly specific." "You fit the prophecy perfectly." He exhaled sharply. "Look, sweetheart, I don't know what backwater planet you're from, but this is kidnapping. You kidnapped yourself. Do you even realize how much trouble this is going to cause?" She gasped, placing a delicate hand over her chest. "Are you rejecting me?" Her lower lip trembled, and damn it, she actually looked heartbroken. John felt his crew's collective gaze boring into him. His mechanic, Kess, cleared his throat. Cap? Hate to interrupt your little romance crisis, but we might have a problem." John turned toward the comms panel. Multiple emergency transmissions were coming through. Ship captains across the sector reporting the same thing. Alien women, bridal gowns, stowing away in cargo holds. Galactic chaos had just begun. The next few days aboard the Mercury's Gambit were nothing short of chaotic. John had hoped that a few stern words and firm no's would send Zilnara packing, but to his dismay, she proved to be an unusually persistent stowaway. No matter how many times he told her to stay in the cargo hold and out of his way, she always found a reason to be involved. At first, it was the usual, alien customs so bizarre they made his head spin. Zilnara would interrupt his work in the control room, peppering him with questions about the ship, Earth culture, human customs. Every time John had to remind himself that she wasn't entirely to blame for the nonsense she was spouting. She was just a product of her outlandish traditions. But as the days wore on, something strange happened. She was helpful, surprisingly helpful. When a radiation leak hit one of the secondary engines, it was Zilnara who sprang into action, not only suggesting a solution, but guiding the crew through the repair process like she'd been working on ships her whole life. John stared at her, momentarily forgetting that she was supposed to be his bride. "Where did you learn that?" he asked, trying to hide his surprise. "I may be Glivani," she winked, "but I've read enough intergalactic manuals to know how a ship runs." She smiled as she handed him the final tool, her expression warm and genuine. "Besides, you seem like a man who knows his way around machines." John didn't know how to respond to that. Normally he would have laughed it off, but this time he was left speechless. It hit differently. As the Gambit continued its course to Terra Nova, the media frenzy surrounding the alien bride phenomenon only grew louder. News outlets flooded every communication channel, and every ship in the sector was being followed by galactic reporters demanding answers. In an attempt to avoid a diplomatic disaster, John reluctantly agreed to a public engagement with Zilnara, much to his own frustration. It was supposed to be a joke, a way to calm the chaos. But as the days went by, John found himself increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. "All right, Zilnara, we need to talk," John said one evening, sitting across from her at the galley table, trying to sound firm. "About the engagement?" she asked eagerly, her large green eyes bright with hope. "No," John muttered. "About you getting your own damn quarters. You're living in the mess hall right now, and I'm running out of excuses for why you're here." Her face fell for a brief moment before her usual cheerful demeanor returned. "I thought maybe I could stay in the pilot's cabin, you know, where you sleep." John blinked, completely caught off guard by her suggestion. "What? No, no way, I'll behave, I promise," she interrupted quickly, leaning forward with a playful gleam in her eye. "I can even help you with the navigation charts. We could, I don't know, work together." She grinned mischievously. "Maybe get a little closer." John couldn't help but let out a laugh despite himself. "You're something else, aren't you?" He shook his head. "Fine, stay in the cabin, but stay out of my way." Zilnara let out a small squeal of joy before jumping up to hug him. For a moment, John stiffened in surprise at the sudden affection, but as she pulled back, looking at him with such genuine warmth, he felt an unfamiliar twinge in his chest. For the first time in days, he allowed himself to see past the crazy alien bride act. There was more to her than just an unexpected passenger. She was smart, resourceful, and oddly charming. He had to admit, even if he wasn't ready to admit it, he kind of enjoyed her company, more than he had enjoyed anyone's in a long while. Later that evening, John found himself alone in the cockpit, trying to focus on the incoming data from Terra Nova. But his mind kept drifting back to the woman in the cabin. What was it about her? There was a subtle grace in the way she moved, a quiet intelligence in her words. He'd seen many women in his life, but none like her. She wasn't just an alien, she was real. A woman, despite the strange customs, who wasn't afraid to be herself. John rubbed his temples, trying to shake off the thoughts. He'd been through enough drama with women to know better than to get wrapped up in something complicated. But this was different. "You're an idiot, Canson," he muttered under his breath. "This is supposed to be just a job." The comms buzzed to life, interrupting his moment of reflection. "Captain, we have a problem," Kendrick's voice crackled through the speaker. "There's another ship, just ahead. It's been hijacked by space pirates." John's instincts kicked in immediately. "We need to help them. Full speed ahead, Kendrick. Get the crew ready." As he ran to prepare for what was sure to be another dangerous encounter, he caught sight of Zilnara, who was already at the ready, holding a blaster with surprising skill. "Need a hand?" she asked, a grin tugging at the corners of her lips. John couldn't help but grin back. "I think you're the one who's going to save us this time, not me." Zilnara laughed, her voice a melody amid the chaos. "I told you I could be useful." Hours later, after the pirate attack had been thwarted thanks to Zilnara's quick thinking, John found himself pacing in his cabin, adrenaline still pulsing through his veins. He didn't want to admit it. Hell, he barely understood it himself, but he couldn't stop thinking about how she had been by his side, ready to fight in the thick of it. John sat at the edge of his bed, his mind racing. It wasn't just about the cargo anymore, or the crazy alien bride situation. It was something else, something he wasn't quite ready to face. But there was no escaping it now. Zilnara had wormed her way into his life, and for the first time he wasn't sure if he wanted her to leave. The night was quiet, save for the soft hum of the ship's engines. John stood by the viewport, staring out at the stars. The turmoil of the past few days felt distant now, replaced by a strange peace he couldn't quite shake. He glanced over his shoulder, where Zilnara stood, her radiant presence filling the room with an energy he didn't know he needed. "I've been thinking," he said quietly, turning to face her. "You're not what I expected." She smiled, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "What did you expect, Captain?" "Someone who'd vanish into space the moment I told her to leave," he muttered, his tone softer than before. "Well, I'm not going anywhere," she replied, her voice low and playful. "Not when I have you." John swallowed, his heart fluttering unexpectedly. There it was again, that tug he'd been trying to ignore. He had tried to keep things simple, to maintain control, but somewhere between the chaos and the madness of it all, he'd begun to care, maybe more than he should. She closed the gap between them, her fingers brushing against his chest. "You know, I never thought I'd meet someone like you," she whispered. "I thought my fate was sealed with someone else, but maybe fate was just waiting for this." Her words, her touch, sent a wave of heat through his body. He stepped closer, meeting her gaze. And for the first time he could see it. The woman behind the wedding gown, the one who had fought by his side, shared his burdens, and made him laugh when he needed it most. With a soft but firm hand, John cupped Zilnara's cheek, leaning in. She didn't hesitate. Their lips met, a kiss that began slow and tender, then grew deeper, more urgent, as if both were finally giving in to the magnetic pull between them. She kissed him back with the same intensity, her hands threading through his hair, drawing him closer. They said nothing more. Words weren't needed. The silence between them spoke volumes of all the things they hadn't yet confessed, all the emotions that had been simmering under the surface for days. As they moved toward the bed, their bodies aligned in perfect harmony, as if the universe itself had choreographed the moment. There were no awkward pauses, no hesitations, just the rhythm of their desire, flowing naturally, unforced. It was a moment of release, of raw emotion and quiet passion, as they discovered each other in ways that went deeper than the surface. The warm glow of the cabin lights flickered around them, casting soft shadows on the intimacy they shared. Every touch, every kiss, was a promise, one neither of them had expected, but both were more than willing to embrace. Hours later, they lay together, tangled in the sheets, basking in the comfort of each other's presence. For the first time since their strange journey had begun, John didn't feel the need to control everything. He didn't need to keep his guard up. And as Zilnara rested her head on his chest, breathing softly, he realized that maybe, just maybe, he was no longer trying to fight the inevitable. The next morning, the Mercury's gambit was in orbit around Terra Nova, and the media frenzy was in full swing. News outlets, galactic reporters, and curious onlookers had gathered in droves, eager to witness what they called the biggest interspecies wedding in history. Yet despite the chaos surrounding them, John felt a surprising calm. He had come to terms with it, the wedding, the unexpected bride, and everything that had unfolded in the past few weeks. John and Zilnara had talked it all through, and despite his initial reluctance, he had realized that he couldn't keep running from the obvious. The woman beside him wasn't just some alien caught up in a bizarre tradition. She was someone he could care about, someone he wanted to build a future with, no matter how unconventional that future might be. As the door to the makeshift ceremony room opened, John stepped inside, doing his best to look composed in front of the crowd. By now, he had gotten used to the media attention, but it still felt unreal. Zilnara was already standing at the altar, her wedding dress more stunning than ever, her face aglow with happiness. Her green eyes locked with his, and for a brief fleeting moment, the madness of it all faded. It was just the two of them. The ceremony was chaotic, as expected. Reporters bumping into each other, cameras flashing, and a swarm of galactic dignitaries trying to make their voices heard. But amidst the noise and confusion, John and Zilnara exchanged their vows. There were no grand speeches, no rehearsed lines, just honesty. "I wasn't sure about this," John said, his voice steady but his heart racing. "But here I am, and I choose you, no matter what." Zilnara's smile was radiant, and she took his hand, squeezing it gently. "I didn't expect this either, but sometimes fate has a way of leading us exactly where we need to be." When the officiant spoke the final words, John felt an unfamiliar sense of peace settle over him. It was official. He was married to an alien, and somehow it felt right. The reception was a blur of dancing, music, and too much champagne. The Gambit's crew, including Kendrick and the others, celebrated in their own awkward ways, teasing John relentlessly about his alien bride. Even Kendrick, typically so reserved, slapped Zilnara on the back with a hearty grin. "Didn't think you'd get him, but here we are." He winked. John rolled his eyes, but inside he was happier than he had been in a long time. Despite the chaos, despite the absurdity, everything had turned out just as it needed to. As the night wore on, the Gambit prepared to leave Terra Nova for its next mission. The crew gathered in the common area, laughing and joking around with John. "So, Captain," Kendrick grinned, "any plans for the honeymoon?" John just shook his head. "With my luck, the next crate we open will probably be another bride." Zilnara, sitting next to him, raised an eyebrow and smirked. "Or maybe a whole fleet of them," she teased. John groaned and leaned back in his seat as the crew erupted into laughter. "Please, no more crates. I can't handle any more surprises." But just as the laughter died down, a distant rattle followed by a faint creak came from the cargo hold. The room fell silent. John froze. Zilnara smirked at him, her eyes gleaming mischievously. "Looks like we have company." John closed his eyes and let out a long sigh. No more crates.